All right, so you want to totally crush those remote coding interviews. Well, today we are diving into a guide that's absolutely packed with tips. And I have to say, some of this stuff even surprised me. It's not all just about, memorizing algorithms and...
Right. It's interesting, isn't it, this whole move to remote interviews? It's kind of a
Yes.
game changer. I mean, you
Yeah.
could be interviewing for companies all across the globe,
Yeah.
but it definitely requires, a different approach.
Yeah. Let's break it down.
Yeah.
So the guide talks about this sort of typical flow, which isn't drastically different from in-person interviews. You have the intro, a little bit of chit-chat, they'll ask about your background.
Right.
And then comes the part that I think everyone is always a little nervous about, the coding challenges.
Yeah, and this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Imagine coding live, almost like pair programming, with the interviewer watching your every keystroke.
Oh, yeah.
That adds a whole new layer of pressure.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why the guide emphasizes something I hadn't really thought of that much before, soft skills. I mean, we all know communication is important,
Right.
but it feels like it's even more vital
Well, that's
in this
like,
remote setting.
Think about it. In person, interviewers can pick up on nonverbal cues, like your energy,
Right.
how you react to a challenge, all that.
Sure.
But remotely, all they have is your voice and your code. So being able to clearly articulate your thought process,
Right.
that becomes absolutely crucial.
So you're essentially like narrating your code as you write it.
Precisely. And that ties into one of the guide's key points, practice.
Yeah.
But practice smart. So platforms like LeetCode are great, but don't just aimlessly grind through problems. Instead, focus on really understanding the patterns, the approaches.
Right.
Can you break down a problem into smaller steps? Can you identify, the core algorithm that you need to apply? That kind of strategic thinking will take you a lot further than just memorizing solutions.
That's actually really good advice.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that myself.
Yeah.
But even with, perfect code, there's always the tech gremlins lurking in the shadows, right?
Yeah, always.
Bad internet connection, noisy neighbors, a sudden power outage.
Yeah.
It's enough to make anyone panic.
Oh, I can relate to that. I once had an interview where my internet cut out right in the middle of explaining my solution.
Oh, no.
I had a backup plan. Thankfully, my phone is a hotspot.
Okay.
But let me tell you, that adrenaline rush,
Yeah.
not fun.
Okay, so reliable internet connection, quiet space are non-negotiable.
For sure.
Backup plan too, just in case. Got it. But let's say the tech gods are smiling on you.
Okay.
You've practiced your code, the big day arrives.
Yeah.
What are some strategies to,
Yeah.
really nail the interview itself?
Sure.
The guide mentions thinking out loud, but what does that actually look like in practice?
So it's about, treating the interviewer as a partner in this whole problem-solving thing.
Right.
So instead of just diving straight into code, take a moment, rephrase the problem in your own words, make sure you understand it. Then talk through your initial thoughts.
Okay.
Maybe even brainstorm a few different approaches with the interviewer. Even if your code, isn't perfect, demonstrating clear, logical thinking, that's incredibly valuable.
It's like you're letting them into your brain, showing them
Yeah.
how you approach a challenge, not just the end result.
Exactly. And that leads to another tip the guide highlights. Structure. Think of it like having a mental checklist for problem solving.
Okay.
So you clarify the problem, discuss potential approaches, choose the best one, outline your solution, and then start coding, explaining each step as you go.
So it's not just about writing elegant code, it's about presenting a clear, structured thought process as well.
Precisely. And that's something that's valuable not just in interviews, but in your everyday work as a developer.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like you're showcasing your ability to collaborate, even in like a solo coding challenge.
Exactly. And speaking of collaboration, this whole structured approach, it also helps with another crucial aspect. Writing clean code.
Yeah.
Even when you're under pressure, you really want to strive for readability.
Yeah.
Use meaningful names for your variables and functions.
Yeah.
Add comments to explain those, tricky parts, indent properly.
Right.
All those, best practices we should be following anyway.
Right. It's like the difference between like a messy notebook and a well-organized document.
Yes.
One is just so much easier to understand and work with.
Precisely. Clean code, it demonstrates your attention to detail. It shows that you care about writing code that others can understand and maintain.
Right.
It's a sign of a professional, and it makes a huge difference, in the eyes of an interviewer.
So we've got structure, clean code down.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about something that always gets me a little anxious.
Okay.
Time management.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get bogged down in the details, lose track of the bigger picture, especially when the pressure's on.
Oh, yeah. Time management is definitely a challenge, even for, seasoned developers.
Mm-hmm.
One tip the guide suggests is to try and get a sense of the time allotted
Okay.
for each part of the interview up front.
Right.
That way you can mentally pace yourself and make sure you're not spending, way too much time on one single problem.
That's a good point. It's like planning your route on a road trip.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you have enough time to hit all the major destinations without rushing.
Exactly. And remember, it's better to have a working solution, even if it's not perfectly optimized, than to, get stuck chasing perfection and then run out of time.
Right.
And if you do find yourself stuck, don't be afraid to ask for a hint. It shows that you're willing to, learn and adapt.
That's reassuring because I think everyone has those moments where they just like blank out under pressure. And while we're on the topic of things that can go wrong, what happens if, despite all of our preparation, we encounter those dreaded tech hiccups during the interview?
Well, first and foremost, stay calm, stay professional. Technical glitches, they happen to the best of us.
Right.
Clearly communicate the issue to the interviewer. And as we mentioned earlier, having a backup plan is crucial.
Yes.
A phone number to call if the video cuts out, a mobile hotspot in case the internet goes down.
Right.
These are lifesavers.
They are. It shows that you're resourceful and prepared for anything.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground on general preparation for remote coding interviews.
Yeah.
But what about those going for more senior roles?
Okay.
What additional challenges might they face?
Senior level interviews definitely up the ante. You'll still have coding challenges, of course.
But they often delve deeper into concepts like system design, architecture, and your ability to, think about the big picture.
That makes sense. At a senior level, it's not just about, writing code. It's about designing and leading complex projects.
Exactly. So instead of just solving a single algorithm problem, you might be asked to design a system like, say, a URL shortener.
Okay, that sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, they want to see your thought process and how you approach, a large-scale design problem.
Sure.
Can you break down the system into its core components?
Yeah.
Can you identify potential bottlenecks and come up with solutions to mitigate them? Do you understand concepts like scalability, reliability, performance?
So it's about showing that you can not only code, but also architect and, think strategically about these complex systems.
Precisely. And this is where your knowledge of design patterns and architecture comes in handy.
Okay.
Are you familiar with, MVC or Model View Controller?
Mm-hmm.
It's a pattern that helps organize your code for, complex applications. Or microservices, where you break down a large system into smaller independent services.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all ties together. But it's not just about, the technical knowledge at the senior level, is it?
You're absolutely right. Senior roles, they often involve leading teams, mentoring junior developers, and making, those key decisions that impact the entire project.
Sure.
So interviewers will also want to see your leadership experience and how you've handled challenges in the past.
So it's storytelling time.
Yes.
Bring out those anecdotes that showcase your leadership style, your ability to handle conflict, your commitment to building, a positive team environment.
Exactly. Have specific examples ready that demonstrate your leadership skills in action.
Got it. So let's say you've made it through the coding challenges.
Right.
Impress them with your system design knowledge and shared, these inspiring stories about your leadership experience. What's the final step?
Well, the guide stresses the importance of a thoughtful thank you note.
Okay.
It's a chance to reiterate your interest in the position and leave a lasting impression.
I've always heard that, thank you notes are important, but
Yeah.
is there anything specific we should be doing for remote interviews?
Definitely. Mention something specific from the interview that, resonated with you.
Okay.
It shows you were engaged and paying attention. For example, I particularly enjoyed our discussion about the challenges of scaling a system like a URL shortener.
Oh, that's a good tip. It shows that you're, genuinely interested and went beyond just going through the motions.
And here's another pro tip. use the thank you note as an opportunity to ask a follow-up question
Okay.
that demonstrates, your continued engagement and thoughtfulness.
Right.
Something like, you mentioned that your team is currently using a microservices architecture.
Uh-huh.
I'd love to hear more about your experience with that approach, if the opportunity arises.
That's smart. It keeps the conversation going and
Yeah.
shows that you're, actively thinking about the role in the company.
Exactly. So you see that this guide really highlights that remote coding interviews, they're about so much more than just your coding skills.
It's about the whole package. Communication, problem solving, technical knowledge, leadership qualities, and even that personal touch in a thank you note.
And I think it's important to remember that these interviews are an opportunity, not just a hurdle.
They're a chance to connect with companies that, align with your values
Yes.
and to showcase your talents to a global audience.
Absolutely. So as you embark on your remote coding interview journey,
Yes.
remember to focus on those core principles we've discussed.
Uh-huh.
Practice consistently, think out loud, structure your approach, write clean code, and, don't be afraid to showcase your leadership experience.
And most importantly, stay calm, be yourself, and let your passion shine through.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see how, the tech world is embracing remote work and creating all these opportunities for,
Yeah.
talented developers all over the world.
Yeah, it is. And, what I find particularly intriguing is
How these principles we've been talking about,
Right.
the clear communication, the structured thinking, focusing on the why behind the code, it's not just valuable for acing interviews.
right. That's such a good point. They're like essential for
Yeah.
building a successful career in tech, regardless of, where you're working, what specific technologies you're using.
Precisely. It's like we're not just, prepping for these interviews. We're developing a mindset, a skill set
Huh.
that will serve us well throughout our careers.
So it's about thinking long term, not just about, getting through that next interview.
Exactly. And that brings me to a final thought I'd like to leave you with.
Okay.
How can you apply these principles, this clear communication, structured problem solving, that big picture thinking, to your current work, your personal projects,
Right.
even your overall approach to learning and growing as a developer?
That's a powerful question. It's a challenge to take these insights beyond the interview and really integrate them into
It is.
our daily lives as, tech professionals.
It is a challenge, but a worthwhile one. And I believe that, by embracing these principles, we can not only excel in our careers,
Right.
but also become more effective communicators,
Mhm.
more strategic thinkers, and ultimately more well-rounded individuals.
I love that. It's about continuous growth and improvement, both professionally and personally.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the, nitty-gritty of coding platforms to
Yeah.
the broader aspects of system design and leadership.
It's been a fascinating deep dive, and I'm confident that, with the right preparation and mindset, anyone listening can not only ace those remote coding interviews, but also really thrive
Yeah,
in this ever-evolving tech landscape.
absolutely. So to all you aspiring coders out there, remember, practice, prepare, stay curious, and most importantly, believe in yourself.
Yeah.
You got this.
Yeah.